welcome to another episode of the MMF Podcast. I am your host, Paul, and this is your other host, Nick. How we doing today, Nick?
I'm doing great, Paul. How are you?
I am doing awesome because I'm very excited about the topic that we are talking about today. What is that, Nick?
We're talking about Mad Max Fury Road and Furiosa, the prequel movie that just came out. I like both of these movies. I actually don't even know what you generally think of Furiosa yet, but I know Mad Max Fury Road is one of your favorite movies of all time.
Yes, it is. It's one of my favorite movies of all time, as well as one of the three original films. We'll dive into my thoughts on the Furiosa movie, but you already know my thoughts about Fury Road. But before we do any of that, let's take it all the way back to when you first discovered Mad Max. I know my intro to Mad Max story. What's yours? Is it me?
Well, seeing the movie, certainly, but I think Mad Max Fury Road was sort of like a big, moment for me in terms of getting into film in general, is because I can remember 2015, everyone talking about this new movie, which is apparently one of the greatest action movies of all time. And I'm like, what the fuck is Mad Max? I've never heard of this shit before in my entire life. And I never got to see it in theaters, even though I assume that's the best way to watch something like this. I really am upset they didn't re-release it for Furiosa, because I would have paid good money to go watch that on the biggest screen possible. I regret not seeing it on that screen. But I actually watched it for the first time because of you when we were at college together.
Oh, okay. So I was right. For a second there, I was like, oh my God, I had no idea that you were like a Mad Max fan before college. But yeah, so we watched it for the first time in the dorm room, you think?
No, I think in our house. I think that's when we watched it.
Awesome. All right. Well, you've been a part of the club since then. Have you seen the three original films?
Not yet. They all just got uploaded to HBO Max, so I'm going to watch them, but as far as I know, there's no continuity from any of these movies to the next one, so I don't think it matters all that much, but I'm still interested to see them. They sound pretty interesting.
I have completely different feelings about each one. And
Okay.
I'll get into it a little bit. Mainly, we're going to talk about Fury Road and Furiosa today, but I'll give you my intro to Mad Max, and then I'll rattle off what I like about the three original films. So my intro to Mad Max actually is kind of weird. And it's kind of sad a little bit too. So I was a freshman in high school, and my papa was actually passing away at the time. He was very sick, and I remember one of the last weekends that we were together. I asked him what his favorite movie was, and he said Stagecoach was a John Wayne movie called Stagecoach. And I was looking up Stagecoach a couple months later and looking at clips of it on YouTube and stuff. And I found this YouTube video comparing the famous chase scene from Stagecoach to the chase scene from Mad Max the Road Warrior. And I was like, what the hell is Mad Max the Road Warrior? It looks so cool. These muscle cars going through the desert, all these explosions and stuff. And then I also saw a Watch Mojo video talking about the best sequels of all time, top 10 sequels that were superior to the original. So I was like, all right, now I have two reasons that I got to check this movie out. So the first one I saw, because I was like, I can't watch the second one without watching the first one. And I didn't really understand what was going on throughout a lot of it. There's a lot of really heavy Australian accents, and the plot is a little confusing. It's very show don't tell, but it also, you don't really know what's going on, or at least I didn't at the time. I was kind of confused. But the last 20, 30 minutes, you really see where it starts to become Mad Max. He's a rogue, cop out there. He feels like the last cop on the force almost, trying to take down this crazy villain named Toe Cutter and his gang that are just doing whatever they want. It's already the apocalypse, even though it's nowhere near to the point of where it is in The Road Warrior, the sequel. But you could tell that the law is starting to fall and things are going haywire. And we get some good action at the end of the movie, but overall, not the biggest fan of the first movie, but I respect it. And there are some cool stunts, and it really laid the groundwork for the whole franchise. Then we got to the second one, and this is where things really started heating up. I watched it for the first time with a few of my friends. We were all like, 13, 14 years old. Like I said, we were freshmen in high school. We had a great time watching it. From all the way from the opening scene with the car chase, and then seeing the guy with the assless chaps with the little teen boy in front of him. Not teen boy, he's like at least 18 or 19, and he has the dog collar around his neck. We're like, what the fuck did we get ourselves into? Like, what the hell is this movie? And then there's some decent action. There's a lot of great quotes in the movie too. People always kind of crap on the original Mad Maxes, saying like it's just all action. There's no good quotes. But I could quote the Road Warrior all day. There's a bunch of really funny lines, especially from uh, Lord Humongous and the assless chap guy, the Mohawk guy. They have some really good lines. And then the final chase scene that I was talking about earlier that I saw through looking up Stagecoach um, definitely delivers. It's 100% practical effects, of course, because they didn't really have CGI yet. Um, Extremely violent. A lot of cars were destroyed making it. It's very, gory. They go all out with it. It's one of the most amazing action spectacles in the history of film. And I think, if I'm correct, I think a stuntman or two got really injured, which is kind of sad to think about. But the effort definitely reflects in the film for everybody who was involved. I think that's a good way to wrap that up because, someone's life is never worth a shot in a movie.
No, I mean that's one thing Mad Max, especially Fury Road and this new one, have been like praised for is like their incredible stunt work, and like they've been used as like a bastion for like why the Oscars should have like a stunt award specifically. And there was a recent thing, I don't know if you saw, where they said like they wouldn't do that because it would just encourage people to be less safe to do like the craziest stunt possible to go for the award. And everyone's like, that's ridiculous. You have no faith in stunt workers to do something incredible and also be safe. Like it's just an excuse to not reward their work at this point.
Yeah, that's like saying you can't give an award for the best actor because Leonardo DiCaprio will climb inside a dead bear to try and survive and then swim through rivers of freezing ice water because you guys wouldn't give him the frickin' award for 15 years. He had to almost kill himself. Oh, wait, that actually happened.
You're right.
But back to Mad Max. So the third movie is called Beyond Thunderdome. So the first movie, I said I didn't really like it that much, but I respect it and I like the ending. The second one, I love. It's awesome. It's a great action movie. Emotionally, I'm not really too invested in it, but I always have a good time when I watch it. That's the best of the three originals. And then the third one, I have an extreme love-hate relationship with. The first 45 minutes is awesome. Max is a little bit further in the future. He has like a beard. He gets washed up in this town. Tina Fey is the lord of the town, like the overlord, and you really get sucked into like the full blown apocalypse. Like they do a really good job setting the scene and everything. And there's this great villain called Master Blaster. He's like this little person who's on this jacked guy's back, and they have a great like struggle for power in the town. Basically, if the whole movie was about this setting with these characters, I think it would have been a great movie. They could have really like fleshed out the plot and let it breathe. But the whole Master Blaster storyline in this town is literally 45 minutes, 40 minutes, and then it's over. Then Max wanders the desert until he runs into a bunch of children. And we see the second half of the movie, which is a crappy crap Lord of the Flies iteration with Mad Max shoehorned into it. And from my understanding, from what I've heard from various video essays and, the internet, essays and stuff talking about it, is that the studio had a budget for a Mad Max movie, and they were also trying to make a Lord of the Flies movie. And somewhere along the lines, maybe somebody had too much, sniff, and the budgets disappeared in the studio. And they said, let's combine the two movies. Mm-hmm. Mad Max is kind of post-apocalyptic. We could just have a bunch of random kids show up. And it is very evident. The movie goes from Mad Max to all of a sudden Max is in Lord of the Flies. And it is horrible. It is the next 30, 40 minutes of the movie is so bad. It just takes you out of it. Everything that you experienced that you liked in the beginning is completely gone, and then they do a crappy version of the Road Warrior final chase scene at the end. But by then you're already so out of it that you don't care. It's like a PG version. Like the kids are like hitting the bad guys with pots and pans and stuff, and it's really goofy. And the weirdest thing is Bruce Spence. He's a famous. I think he's a famous Australian actor. He's definitely Australian. He has the Australian accent. He plays one of the sharks in Finding Nemo. You definitely recognize his voice, if not his face. He plays a character in The Road Warrior where he's called the gyro captain. He flies around on this little helicopter. He comes back in Beyond Thunderdome, the third installment, but it's not the same character. But he's also a guy in the post-apocalypse that flies vehicles. He flies an airplane. He sees Max. They don't recognize each other at all. They don't acknowledge each other, but it's the same actor just playing a completely different character that has a similar character trait. But he's not nearly as interesting or funny as the first character that he played.
I get what you're saying, but that's actually like, as I've been learning about this franchise, that's a thing that George Miller has done pretty consistently with these movies. Is he's just like, oh, I love this actor, I want to work with him again, so he's recast them as a completely different character. Like Immortan Joe in Fury Road is Toe Cutter.
We were gonna get to Toe Cutter and Immortan Joe. I was definitely gonna bring that up, like you said. But that is way better than this. If you watch Beyond Thunderdome, Nick, you will see him pop up for literally 5 minutes, say like 2 lines, and fly a plane. When he says, I wanted to work with him again, he could have given him a bigger role than that, or at least made him the same character. And Immortan Joe and Toe Cutter are like 40 years apart. This was like a couple years later.
He's done the same thing with Fury Road and Furiosa too, actually.
Who was the recast?
So Scrotus in the new one in Furiosa was one of the war boys, like specifically the one you've sent me this clip before, where he's like, he was looking at your blood bag. That's Scrotus in Furiosa. He's the uglier one that looks like Butthead from Beavis and Butthead.
Yeah, no, I see it. I see it now. That is him. He was looking at your blood bag. He was scanning the horizon. No, I'm waiting.
Great scene.
I'm waiting in Valhalla.
I wanted to say one more thing about Thunderdome before we move on, because I don't think I've mentioned this to you, but like it was like shortly after Tina Turner's passing where I went to the New Beverly Cinema, and before whatever movie it was, they played this music video that she made for the movie, We Don't Need Another Hero. And I didn't know anything about any of the previous Mad Max movies. So this is the first thing I'm seeing of any of these. And I'm just like, what the fuck even is this shit? The song was so like dramatic. Like I'm sure it got nominated for an Oscar. It wasn't a bad song. But I was like,
probably
is this Mad
didn't
Max?
fit the vibe at all.
Give it a listen afterwards. It's fascinating.
Now we're done with the original 3, unless you have something else that you want to add.
I don't. I still have to see them. I'll see if I agree with you in short time, but I'm looking forward to watching them anyway.
Oh, one last thing about the original trilogy. I was such a big fan at the time, and I had no idea that they were making a Fury Road. But when I was a freshman in high school, towards the end of that year, after I already became a fan of Mad Max, I made this. We had an assignment.
What is that?
To make. It's the Interceptor. I made it in ceramics. Isn't that awesome?
That's awesome, dude.
I would always take whatever the ceramics project was, I would always just bullshit and just make it into something that I liked. So the assignment for this was to make a teapot.
I could see the vision.
So this is like where the water was supposed to come out. And I'm not sure where you're supposed to pour it in. Maybe like this crack here. I don't really remember. But you could never really use it as a teapot. But technically it was. So I got an A.
I thought that story was going to take a turn for the worse where you said I got a failing grade because I didn't do the assignment properly. But you had a cool
The one that
teacher.
I got an A+ on. Thank you. The one that I got an A plus on was my R2D2. The assignment was to make something out of pinch pot. It could be anything you wanted it to be. And in my head, I thought he was a very cylindric kind of shape. My teacher was also a big movie buff. I loved him. He was a great teacher, and he was instant A plus for me for that.
That's awesome, dude. That's so cool. I didn't even know about this.
Yeah, I'll have to show you that one. Maybe when we do Star Wars, I'll someday I'll bring that one out. And then I also have one last thing to show before we get into the new movies. When the game was coming out, right before we went to college, I think that summer the game came out. It might be the last game I ever pre-ordered at GameStop and bought. It was the Mad Max game, and you got this cool interceptor if you pre-ordered the game. And I've had it in the box ever since. So figured I would use it for something.
That's awesome.
Pretty okay game. It was worth playing through once. There was too much grinding, though, for me to replay it. It was just like explode 100 cars and you level up your car like 1%. All right, Nick, where would you like to go now? Fury Road?
I guess Fury Road, that's the one that came out first. That's the one that kickstarted the craze again.
Yeah, kickstarted the craze, and then we had to wait 9 years to get a sequel.
I don't know if you've been seeing, but Furiosa is not even doing that well at the box office. And like people have like reminded me since then that like Fury Road did not even do as well as you would expect. Like I thought it was like $1 billion blockbuster, but it only made like 400 million, which is still like a good amount of money, obviously. But that's not like what we've come to expect from a lot of blockbusters nowadays. So I guess it's just Mad Max has never been that big of a moneymaker. And, you know, like, I was surprised, too, it took that long to make Furiosa, but, like, I don't know. I guess we're going to have to wait another 10 years for the follow-up.
If George Miller is still kicking it, I will go see it. But the funny thing is, dude, for the average American audience, you know the one movie that they probably would know from the Mad Max franchise?
Is it Thunderdome?
Yes. I think it was the first one to get a widespread American release. Like, it was all over the country. And because I think Mel Gibson had already started to become famous in America by that point. So they got it into America, and a lot of people saw it. It might have been the most profitable one up until Fury Road.
That's great. What a great first impression.
Not. But as we've talked about for this this whole podcast so far, so right around 2013-14 is when I was getting super into Mad Max. I was talking about it all the time. I was getting really into muscle cars and everything, and there was this thing called Wasteland Weekend. It was kind of like Burning Man, but just for Mad Max. I don't know if they still do it, but I wanted to go so bad. I wasn't old enough, but it was like a party in the desert for like 3 days. I watched YouTube videos about it and stuff. I wanted to go. Never ended up going. Maybe one day, but and then I found out that they were making another Mad Max movie, and I was so excited. And I went with a bunch of my friends on opening night, and we saw Mad Max. And believe it or not, I actually didn't like it that much when I first saw it, because I kept feeling like Max was dubbed. Like, for some reason in the theater, it was bothering me so much. Like, all of his lines like weren't matching up with his mouth. I went to see it again in the theater, and I loved it. Like, all those feelings were gone. And then the next year at the Oscars, dude, that was probably the last time I actually watched the Oscars, because the Oscars are pretty bullshit, besides like clips here and there. But every time they announced Mad Max was the winner, I was going crazy, dude. Another award for Mad Max. Woo! Mad Max. Woo! I think it was 6 awards in total they won. And one of the announcers was nominating for the Foreign Film Award. And he goes up there, and as a joke, he goes, Mad Max wins. And then he goes, oh, no, just kidding. Like, this movie from Afghanistan wins. But it was really funny at first when he said that. It was like even the people from Hollywood were surprised that it won so many.
No, for sure. It like swept the tech awards. And I wanted to say, I think you're right about the dubbing, the ADR. That was something I noticed on my rewatch. Maybe like they like brought like so much like practical equipment, they just forgot the boom mics. And they're like, oh shit, Tom Hardy, come in the studio, redo your lines.
Yeah. Or he just didn't do a good enough job on set and they didn't like his delivery.
Oh yeah, it's one of those things I can see being off-putting at first. It's like when I watch Italian horror movies or like Italian westerns, even when they're like very clearly dubbing themselves over. I'm just like, what the fuck? Why do people love this shit? And it's just like a little hump you got to get over to try and like actually like engage with the story. But I can
I
definitely see
prefer
why that's like,
subtitles. When
yeah.
when there's a film in a different language, I can get invested with subtitles like that. Like Godzilla minus one. Bam. We got to make a podcast about that, dude. I have so much to say about that, but stay on Mad Max. So I think this is the first one where they do like a really, really good job establishing lore. What is the Citadel? What is Immortan Joe? Like, what are these war boys doing? Like, it was such a good way of showing, not telling. We get to like learn more about the story in Furiosa. It's more explained. It gets developed. We get the pieces to the puzzle as we go in Fury Road. It's almost like a silent movie. Like it's not silent, and there's a bunch of great lines. But do you understand what I mean? How it's like the story just moves, and you're just seeing it, rather than they're not really explaining anything that's going on.
I get what you mean. It's a very visual movie. That's why there's been recent comments of George Miller saying he doesn't even like dialogue in movies that much. He thinks it slows it down. And I can see why, because Mad Max Fury Road moves at a breakneck pace. They just drop you into the world, and they're immediately just fucking not stopping. It's just balls to wall action from the get go.
Yeah. I love Nux too. I love when there's an army of characters that are like bad guys, like the Putty Patrol from Power Rangers, but then you take one of those nobodies and you make them like one of the main characters. I always like that dynamic, and I think they knocked it out of the park with Nux's character because we get to see him slowly kind of reverse his beliefs in a way, or at least start to understand people that don't believe the same things that he does as the story goes along. But he still comes full circle back into his values, but he's still fighting for what's right. It's a really good like arc for Nux throughout the movie, and I think it's very satisfying. Also, like the mystery of like how this world is run with Immortan Joe, like all the people at the bottom groveling for water. Like, why? What are the benefits of those people? Like, why does he even keep them alive? You know, like what does he get from that? Like, they don't grow his food.
He weirdly seems to like value life as it is, because he has all these kids that aren't like perfect, but like he still keeps them around and keeps them alive. They're just not what he's looking for. He doesn't seem to really kill actively unless it's someone trying to fuck with him like Furiosa.
All the cars, they went above and beyond all the designs of all the cars. One of the coolest shots in film history in my opinion, is that first shot when they're all driving after they figure out that Furiosa is deflecting and she's not going to Gas Town. The whole army revs out into the desert, and you see the shot of the guitarist, and then the fire shoots, and you see the whole armada of cars behind him, and he just hits this riff. And then it cuts to Immortan Joe driving his car, and he's like furious, like his face. That's one of my favorite scenes in anything. Just visually, I can't believe they had all those cars actually out there to do that.
You know what's crazy is that guitar guy is actually married to Riley Coe, the main of Immortan Joe's wives that Nux falls in love with. She fell in love with the doof warrior.
Really?
I know, right? She saw him play that guitar. She's like, ooh.
I like how he even gets involved in the final fight too, when they take his mask off and he's like
They should call you to play a war boy.
Dude, I would love that. I could be a war boy today.
Oh my goodness.
Witness me, blood bag! I'm waiting. Speaking of which, do you have any favorite lines from the movie?
I think you just said them. Like, for instance, like after I left Furiosa, I was just driving around with Katrina, and I was just yelling, "Witness me!" And I was turning really fast, so she was screaming at the top of her lungs. You can't show guys Mad Max; they'll want to be Nux.
Yeah, I love that. I quote that movie all the time. And my friend Paul, who I saw the movie in the theater with, and my also my friend Josh, he was with me too. We also all quote the movie. Morton Joe has a few really good lines.
Mediocre.
Obviously, "Witness Me" is like one of the big quotes. Morton Joe, there's this moment where he finds one of his wives. She gets run over by the car, and two of his guys come up to him on a dirt bike, and they're like, "Are you okay?" And he goes, "Whoa, no!" And then it just cuts away. Nux goes up to a Morton Joe. He goes, "I'll pike her in the spine for you. Keep it breathing."
Do not get addicted to water.
That's it. That's it. Dude, Josh says that like every time we hang out. He goes, "Don't get addicted to water." Makes no sense. My friend Voss says that too. Like the whole gang quotes this movie now for like 9 years.
It's like a shot of adrenaline right into your body. Like you can't help but like
Yeah.
remember it that way.
Max doesn't really have any that I quote. Like there's the famous "That's bait." Like it's a really popular GIF. Whenever somebody posts something they want to argue about, they always go, "That's bait." Also, when he goes, "She went under the wheels. She went under the wheels." I don't know why we quote that sometimes, but we do. My favorite quote of the movie, number one, right here, right here. Rictus, when Morton Joe's baby dies and the organic mechanic takes it out, he goes, "Baby, it was perfect. Perfect in every way." And then Rictus goes, "I had a baby brother, and he was perfect. Perfect in every way." He just repeats it. For some reason, we all quote that too. Those are all the ones that come to mind. I'm sure there's even more, honestly, but those are the ones that jump out. So many great characters. Like even the Bullet Farm guy. Like I love his scene where he starts screaming with all the classical music. He's shooting the machine guns in the air when he's blind. Gastown, the guy with the nipple clamps. My friends and I have insulted each other by calling each other the Gastown guy, like for years now. Like, "Oh, you have your nipple clamps? Like, are you ready for the beach today?" Like, just stupid jokes. But
No, there's so many
there's
like
so
that's like another thing of just the world building is just like adding all these wacky characters and you're like, what's this guy's deal? Like you don't get to find out. He's just there. You got to deal with him now.
every character really does a great job. Nobody stands out as a bad actor or a bad performance. Like nobody really is out of place. I even like the little guy with the telescope when he's like, "Go see what's bothering Dad." I like how they had that lore with like Furiosa squad, like the random naked lady in the desert, and she finds like the people that she grew up with, the old ladies that fire the muskets. They were cool. It's just a nonstop adrenaline punch that shows, it doesn't tell, and it does a great job, and it's beautiful to watch. I could watch it any day of the week, anytime, anywhere.
I think another thing that's great about it is that I want to mention is the freaking colors of the movie. They just freaking pop. It's beautiful to look at. And like with so many like desaturated movies nowadays, it's like it stands out among the rest of them because
Funny
like they
story
like
about
could have
that.
made it look very like normal. What'd you say?
I said, funny story about that. George Miller got his wife to supervise the color correction. He said, "I want a woman to do this because she would know what's beautiful." So he got his wife to do all the color correcting for the movie.
He was right because even the nighttime scenes too have this just beautiful like blue like overlay. That's been a huge thing with me is just nighttime scenes looking like shit nowadays. Like I love this
Yeah.
filmmaker Mike Flanagan, but all of his nighttime scenes look like shit. I can't see anything.
Especially the early 2000s, dude. I remember really struggling, like watching even like Pirates 1 during the day. I remember like having trouble seeing it on my TV. It wasn't as good a TV as we have now, but it was definitely hard, like whenever the sun was coming through the window to see what was going on.
No, for sure. Lighting in movies, a forgotten art that Mad Max showcases properly.
The old Mad Max movies, the color was definitely not as good. Like the Fury Road is completely different. It's beautiful. compared to like even the Road Warrior. Like it looks raw. Like it's a great movie and it looks raw like a post apocalypse, but it's not nearly as beautiful as Fury Road is.
Fury Road almost feels like, I mean, I haven't seen those other ones, but you can say if you think I'm right, but like it seems like it's something he probably wanted to make the entire time and the technology just wasn't there. And then he was like, "Oh, maybe I can actually do this now." Cuz that's like what it feels like. It just feels so big and epic in a way. And like him returning to this franchise feels like he wanted to do this the whole time.
Yeah, definitely.
I think a lot of people have problems with Max's characterization because it's called Mad Max, and like I genuinely couldn't tell you anything about Max. Like Fury, it is like Furiosa's story in many ways, and I don't really like. In some ways, like Max could probably be written out if you wanted to write him out. So I think a lot of people didn't like that as much.
Well, you could say the same thing about any of the first three, really. Maybe not the first one, but two and three, you definitely could write Mad Max out of. The Road Warrior could literally just be that one city of people versus Lord Humongous's group. Like they could have had a movie themselves, and then Beyond Thunderdome, you could have just made Lord of the Flies. So no argument there.
You're probably right. I mean, I think a lot of people just don't really know Mad Max that well. Like I saw a post recently that was like, if Furiosa was this, it would have made $2 billion, and it was like a photoshopped image of Mel Gibson, old Mel Gibson, like in like a leather jacket with a gun. And I'm like, do you actually believe that? Do you believe Mel Gibson would make $2 billion?
They tried making an Expendables movie with Mel Gibson as the villain, and Expendables was already kind of like a dying thing. The second one made a lot of money, but the third one was like record low. Opening weekend, it was like 15 million or something like that across the whole country. Like Expendables 3 bombed, and Mel Gibson's face was all over the trailer. So I have no faith in him being a box office draw at all. Especially because that's like the demographic that probably would still like Mel Gibson, like older dudes that just want like action, that remember like Braveheart and stuff, and they didn't go see it.
He's washed.
Yeah.
So what do you like about Furiosa? Because we haven't talked about that really at all. I feel like we talked a lot about Fury Road. I guess we can get into Furiosa now for the most part.
Right out the gate, I really liked Chris Hemsworth's character, Dementis. It just seems
Yes.
like he's really just like having fun, and people like shit on him a little bit from what I've seen on the internet, but I didn't get that at all. I thought he was one of the best parts of the movie. You're like, oh, he's not even taking the role seriously. Like he's supposed to be like a crazy warlord leader, you know? He's supposed to be kind of having fun. Like people are way too critical of his performance because he's having a great time. It shows on screen, and he steals every scene that he's in.
I totally agree. I think he is the best part, and I haven't seen the same stuff that you have. Like everyone on film Twitter seems to love him. One thing I would say is like I saw this article. I don't remember where it was, but they said they were asking what was drawing people to the movie. Was it Mad Max as a franchise? Was it Anya Taylor Joy, or was it Chris Hemsworth? And it was actually like in that order. It was Mad Max, Anya, and then Chris Hemsworth, which surprised me in the sense that Chris Hemsworth is Thor, but I guess like, you know, years of just being one character has like really done damage to him as like a marketable star, which is a shame because he's awesome, and like everything I've seen him in, he's so funny and charismatic and just naturally like interesting. And I hope like this like opens a lot of doors for him in his career because he's like very good and people don't see that in him.
Yeah. And I even like Thor. I didn't like when they made him fat and a loser. I hated that. But Thor was awesome. In Infinity War, that was like peak Thor. Like it was so cool to see him like just become like the most powerful version of himself.
No, for sure. I think he just needs to get away from that at this point. I don't know, especially after the fourth one. I don't even know if you saw that, but like those movies are doing nothing for him anymore. Like he just needs to do anything else at this point.
Yeah, I didn't see it. It looked like a piece of shit, and I had no desire to see it, so I didn't. But so the same kind of stuff that's in Fury Road that we loved, like the lore building, all the weird characters in the background, it's very prevalent in Furiosa as well. And we even get to see a little bit more of that. I would say maybe the action's toned down like maybe two notches. It's still very prevalent and still very awesome, but there's a little bit more here as far as story and lore. Like we get to be with the characters a little bit longer, have a little bit more dialogue scenes than we did in Fury Road. And one of the scenes that I really loved that like stood out to me was when Dementis first rides into the Citadel and he starts, trying to sell the whole Citadel like, join me, join my crew, and I'll make sure you have a fair share of food and water. And then they're all looking at him in complete silence. And Gastown Nipple Guy goes, choose any of them, any single person in this room, select. And he picks one random war boy, and he instantly goes, witness me, and kills himself for Morton Joe. That was like awesome. That was a great way to establish that this is still the Immortan Joe and the War Boys that we know from Fury Road. Like nothing has changed from that point to that point.
No, yeah, it was great because it was like very separated at first from like everything we knew from Fury Road. So just driving back to the Citadel was like, oh shit, here we go. That was when I was like, oh, this movie's about to get going right now.
Yeah. That was definitely where it really picked up. Like I liked the beginning when Furiosa's mom was doing the chase and everything. Like that was cool. I think in between that sequence and the Citadel, it drags just a little bit. There are a few moments of like, I feel like this movie could have been a little bit shorter, but I was still thoroughly entertained. Like it wasn't like the Planet of the Apes where I was literally like counting down the minutes, like falling asleep. Like I was very entertained during Furiosa.
It makes them both different for one thing. So I do like that this movie is not exactly a 2 hour long action scene in the same way. It's good to slow it down and be a more character focused story, I think.
Yeah, like all like the lore we really wanted to know more about from Fury Road got explained, and I don't feel like we really dwelled on anything for too long. Like we got to see the Bullet Farm, we got to see Gastown, we got to see Furiosa's homeland, the Green Place. It did exist. It wasn't just like made up. And the cars were awesome in this movie too. I especially liked Furiosa's car that she steals at the end, that hot rod. That was so fucking cool, dude. Hot take, but I was like, I think that's cooler than the Interceptor when I was watching her drive that. Just I know it's a hot take, but I was thinking that.
Make a tea kettle of it.
I definitely could. Another cool thing, I was trying to figure out like how could they follow up like the Circus Olay guys from the first movie from Fury Road, because they were just so cool whenever they were going from car to car like pirates, like throwing bombs and stuff. But then they had the paramotor guys in that one fight. That was so cool, dude.
When they were flying,
I was like, okay, yeah, the paramotors. I when I saw that scene, I was like, okay, they followed up the Circus Olay guys. This is pretty fucking cool.
All I could think during that scene was earlier in the movie, there's like a random interaction with Chris Hemsworth and a random character where this character says to Chris Hemsworth, I only listen to the Octoboss. And I went, who the fuck is the Octoboss? Why is it this random tall guy? And then you see him in that scene, and he's got like these tentacles flying off of his plane. I'm like, oh, okay, he's the Octoboss.
I love how there's like so much like realism to every character. Like every character you could tell has like a set of motives and a mind. That Octoboss was working with Dementis, and Dementis decided to shoot some of his own men to sacrifice them. And then he goes like, Dementis, you're scum. Like that was cool to see. Like the villains aren't perfect. Like sometimes they don't like the way that they do things. Like they have disagreements. They don't always perfectly work together. So that was cool to see. And then later on, we saw he was trying to do the same thing Dementis was. He was trying to take over one of the war rigs and go to Gastown. So that was cool to see.
Definitely, every character is very well defined and interesting.
Yeah, and like we said, all the action scenes are great. There was definitely a lot more CGI in this one than Fury Road, but I never thought it looked like terrible. There were a few moments where it looked obvious that something was CGI, but it never like took away from the movie for me. There was enough still practical stuff that I was like, all right, this is still Mad Max.
No, for sure. And I mean, like I said, like just in comparison to like so many other blockbusters we get, like this is like a godsend in so many ways. This is like a level of energy and commitment to a certain way of doing things that we don't see in so many movies nowadays. And so I just appreciate it in that sense.
Yeah. so much effort put into it. Like they didn't just pump it out, you know. You could tell they really took time to develop every single shot, every scene, every character in the background has some kind of story. Every little piece of their outfit tells you something. I wish Rick just did a little bit more. I feel like he wasn't in the movie as much as Fury Road, but you know what? He got a bunch of scenes in Fury Road, so maybe it's okay. I feel like if we dive into it like too much more, we might be spoiling like the major points of the movie. We did a pretty good job just kind of talking about it without giving too much stuff away. Anything else you think we should cover with Furiosa?
I don't think so. I think anyone who likes Fury Road would like Furiosa.
Yeah, I think
It's a high recommendation from me.
it deserves a lot more viewers than it's getting. It probably won't be a sequel, or at least for a long time. But you know, I'm always down for more Mad Max. A TV show would probably ruin it. I feel like it's a franchise that should stick to the movies, unless they got the guys who did Fallout to do it, because they're nailing it. Did you see the Fallout show?
No, I've never even played the game, so I have like little interest in seeing the show. But you think it's good?
Oh my gosh, dude. The Fallout show is far and away the best film video game adaptation ever. It is exactly like the game. You could tell certain characters are being played in a certain way because you could develop your character in the game to whatever skill tree you like. Like if you want to be better at shooting, better at charisma, better at talking, better at strength. Like you could tell how each character would be on like the skill tree, and all like the dialogue is great. All the characters come from different backgrounds, so they all have. It's just so good. Like I don't want to spoil it, but like you don't even need to know the game. But if you do, you will appreciate the fuck out of it. They put so much effort into making sure the world felt like the game.
Wow, better adaptation than Mortal Kombat?
Yeah, that movie was like fun. You know, it was nothing like super crazy, but I haven't even rewatched that. But I liked it when we watched it during the pandemic together. That was fun.
I'll say one more thing about um, the original actor for Immortan Joe, who's just like fantastic and was like in the original Mad Max as well as a different character. I've been seeing excerpts and clips recently of like behind the scenes from Fury Road and like how he was on set. And everyone just friggin' loved that guy. Like there was like excerpts from this book on the making of the movie that said the War Boys would call him Daddy, and they just got really into it. Like some of them were like, "I'm not calling him Daddy," but then they're like, "Oh, that's my daddy." And like there was one instance where he grabbed a megaphone and he goes, "Daddy's here," and all the War Boys started cheering and going crazy. I love it.
Immortan Joe.
It was like that. I'll send you.
He looks at me. He looks me right in the eyes.
He seemed like a great guy. They all loved him.
He was looking at your blood bag.
How does it rank among George Miller's other films like Happy Feet and Happy Feet 2?
Happy Feet 2 is at the top. Then Thunderdome. Happy Feet 1. Something else.
Dude, I have the same ranking.
That I don't know. 3 question marks of other films he's worked on, and then all the way at the bottom, Fury Road.
So
I don't even know
true,
what they are, but I know they're better. Babe, the Pig in the Big City. That's his best movie. He was a producer. All right, well, I guess that's it for this episode. Next episode, do we want to go for the... You want to officially go for the sequels episode? Sequels tier list?
I'm down, dude.
Well, if you made it this far, thank you all for watching. I really appreciate it. Let us know what you thought of Furiosa down below, or if you like the old Mad Max movies or Fury Road. Have a great rest of your day, and please subscribe. Thank you for watching.
Peace out.